The Chemical Brothers weren't originally called the Chemical Brothers. Prior to 1995, they were called the Dust Brothers, a name they actually stole from another dance music duo from LA. So when Tom Rowlands and Ed Simons were about to release their debut album, they knew that name wouldn't do. They decided to call that album Exit Planet Dust, as an homage to the moniker they were shedding, and inspired by the preferred weekend activities of most of their fans, they came up with a new band name too. The Chemical Brothers were born, and this album was their opening statement. I'm Tom from Happy Mag, and this is why Exit Planet Dust mattered.
They made a path for people who were interested in melody, interested in dance, interested in rock, interested in pop, without necessarily fixing themselves in any one area.
I think Exit Planet Dust was kind of significant in the UK, especially at the time, because there were so many amazing Britpop acts that were around, and we were hearing so much from Oasis and Blur and all these groups, and the Chemical Brothers came through in that period of time and presented an alternative reality of what UK popular culture was like. You know, you could transport yourself just by listening to these songs into a UK club, and it was really exciting.
They were about being free, turning off, not being angst-ridden, but physical. In the mid to the late 90s, it was a really important thing to know that you could let go.
Exit Planet Dust made way for the hedonistic, gnarly, and absolutely massive sounds that would capture Britain's post-techno rave generation.
The growing number of illegal rave parties in the region. In Bristol, officers managed to stop an illegal party at Brislington after youngsters broke into a disused factory.
It's a 90s phenomenon which looks set to stay.
Like their listeners, Rowlands and Simons were ravers who spent their weekends sucking up dust, eating glue, and partaking in whatever other chemical delights they could find.
And Exit Planet Dust showed that we had an idea, you know, that could last over the length of an album.
It's kind of like music that sort of needed to exist almost.
Speaking to the now-defunct Muzik magazine, Simons said that the Chemical Brothers were about young people who want to go out and get battered every weekend.
You can't be divorced from the drugs of the time. If you were a big dope smoker, you sort of fell a little more naturally into the trip hop. If you were into the Britpop things, you were probably a little more likely to drink, while Chemical Brothers and that crowd, it was speedy ecstasy.
Back then, Britain had already been bouncing to acid house and techno for a full decade, and the party drug ecstasy was just everywhere. Artists across the continent, from shoegazers like the Jesus and Mary Chain to adult rockers like Primal Scream or the Stone Roses, were becoming inspired by the mass bliss only raves could generate. But where British rock groups would borrow elements of acid house or techno, the Chemical Brothers bled it. They distilled the most highly charged conventions of rave into a total attack on the senses.
There was a real clash of cultures that was represented in the music itself. You know, you've got hip hop and you've got house and you've got breakbeat and you've got the sample heavy music, then with ethereal elements and then with elements of rock, and there was guitars and there was Tim Burgess from the Charlatans and Beth Orton, and it was really exciting. It sort of felt like this cultural crossroads that even if you're an indie kid, you could, you know, go into a club and dance with hip hop kids.
I think what Chemical Brothers did with Exit Planet Dust was pave the way for people who were already there, but just showed them a route to get around some of the last barriers to clearing up those people who are into rock music but actually found themselves seduced by electronic dance music.
Torn up 303 melodies, distorted guitar lines, and big beat breaks were their weapons of choice. A combo made to move crowds and roll back eyeballs. Exit Planet Dust is packed end to end with proto versions of what would make the duo commercial juggernauts.
Now to tell us the winner of the Best British Dance Act,
the Chemical Brothers.
From the get-go, the Chemical Brothers' sense for rhythm, tension, and release were obvious. And the bass lines on Leave Home and In Dust We Trust are still some of their meatiest. Not to mention Chemical Beats, the duo's de facto title track, which has remained a staple of their live sets to this day. Whether you saw the brothers at Glastonbury in 1997, Fuji Rock in 2011, or in 2019 on their No Geography album tour, Chemical Beats was there to whip the crowd into shape. Though they'd later become massively acclaimed, the Chemical Brothers never seemed like a band who looked for recognition. Their quest was much simpler: make the world dance harder than it had ever danced before. They sought out crowds who were hungry for total surrender and served it to them on a silver platter. At the heart of dance music lies a truth. Every now and then, people just want to lose it for a while. Few bands understand this as well as the Chemical Brothers, and it all started with Exit Planet Dust. That's why it mattered, and that's why it still matters today. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again soon.